This is Claudia Fogelin, and Marianne, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody.
We're delighted to be here again on an MMI net meeting. Absolutely was fascinated with Jay's introduction about the FA task force. I think it's going to link right in to what we're talking about today. But our topic, as Hillary said, is a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And we're subtitling it why distribution organizations can't afford to go back to basics, which is something we've been hearing again and again. What we feel and what we hear these days is that as the light appears at the end of the tunnel and the market finally seems to be stabilizing to some extent, we hear an almost universal sigh of relief across the industry, across asset management. As everyone says, the end may likely be in sight, and it won't be long before we can just get back to doing what we always did before all of this started. We certainly understand that emotion. We share that in many ways, but we want to really let people know that we think it would be a waste of a crisis to do so. What happens in a crisis is that there are always unique opportunities that can only appear at difficult times. And what we're asking for everyone across the industry to do is to really understand what their opportunities are before they say, let's go back to basics, let's do what we've always done. One of the things we all need to remember is that wholesaling was in a period of very significant change, even before the last fall and all the problems. We had shrinking margins, model portfolios, more and more available information online. Things were changing already, and these things, while they may have been put on hold for the last several months, they're not going away. And there are new challenges that have an additional level of complexity that are going to really be set forward for distribution organizations. I do want to say right up front that we are not here to point the finger at wholesalers. In fact, we are great believers in wholesalers, internals, externals, hybrids, and this has been a period of time where they are all working harder than they ever have worked before. What we hope you'll all look at here is the strategic part of the distribution organization. What should the leaders and the management be doing to create an environment in which the wholesalers can be even more successful? And what we hope you'll walk away with is that you'll be able to identify some next steps and some challenges that you will need to examine to really meet the current advisor needs, as Jay was talking about with that FA task force. Current advisor needs, which are changing so rapidly, and to maximize your sales results and theirs going forward. But first we're going to go backwards, actually. We're going to go back to a day I know we all remember very well. As a sales manager from off a sales desk who recently was laid off told me the day that the world changed, September 15, 2008. We've given you the headlines from those days just to remember what it was like as we all woke up to Lehman and Morgan and Merrill Lynch and all the other issues on the table. And I think we were all a little numb on that date. We certainly were, because it would be hard to believe these things were going to happen, and we certainly didn't know what was going to happen going forward. And so we've heard new architecture, new landscape. We're talking about structural changes. And then the U.S. News and World Report headline, brace for a storm. And this has absolutely been the image we've heard again and again over these tumultuous months, is the image of the storm. You may have seen many, many people standing in front of PowerPoint presentations pointing at ships at sea. And we're going to kind of stick with that image, although not entirely here. But what I'd like to tell you is what happened at Interactive Communications on September 15th. When we got over the original numbing shock, we talked to each other, Marianne and I, and we decided that what we could do best in this difficult time was to really stay out in the industry and try to keep track of changes, try to understand what was happening and what wholesalers should be doing at that moment. And I know some of you have participated in net meetings and white papers we've done as this environment changed rapidly. I will say for a long period of time, it was next to impossible to coalesce all that information that we had into any kind of trend. It was just so transactional and reactive. Things just kept happening. Now I will say we are beginning to see some very clear trajectories that we can talk about. And what I'd like to talk to you about now are the three reactions, the three biggest trends that we've seen in relationship to this. And here's our storm image for you. When it comes to distribution organizations, we've seen three reactions to the storm. The first is to tie everything down and hope that there will be minimal damage. So we get another nice storm image there of ship at sea. Just make certain everything is tied down so you don't lose it. And, of course, the advantage to this is that when you come out the other side of the storm, you still have everything intact. It's an expensive option in a turbulent time, but it's one that I would say a lot of folks tried to take. The second option, which is make necessary cuts and then plan to rebuild, was a very big one across the industry that we saw. And the image I want to give you is that, when you have a storm at sea, some ships in the sailing days would even cut down their mast in order to stay afloat. So we have groups of asset managers who are now in boats that don't actually sail anymore or sail very poorly. And go ahead, Marianne.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, for many organizations, it was really the only thing that they could do to survive.
Yeah, and their third option, which is, of course, the one we all are attracted to, is the concept of being able to make changes or plans while the storm is still raging. And that's a very, very small slice of the pie. You really see the first two are the more dominant of the two. And, I think we'd all love to say we worked for organizations that made changes and were able to be innovative in this time. But just as Marianne said, we really have to tell you that causes as we see them of what predicted which path a firm would take is not even slightly related to the competence of the management team or the strategic ability. What it really is related to is three things, two of them completely out of the control of the organization. First is that whatever product you're selling needs to have survived the storm. So it really doesn't matter how tight your ship was, how good everybody was. If your product was really, really damaged in the storm, you had to pick option one or two. The second, again, very compelling and almost as large, is the health of the parent company of the asset manager. That, in fact, there have been asset managers within larger institutions that have had terrible times and healthier asset managers who've had to actually move backwards to help keep the larger ship alive. So those are really important. That we're not saying here is smart companies innovated and not smart companies did something else. It was largely from outside causes. And the last thing, and I think this is a minor one, which is not within the control of the distribution organization, it's worth mentioning to the least extent, the ability to move forward at this time was tied to wholesaler effectiveness. The more really strong the wholesaling team, the better off an asset manager was, although in the face of some of the performance, there's no way even the best wholesaler on the face of the earth could have maintained things. So the reason we bring this to you, we don't bring this to you to say you should have been innovating. We don't bring this to you to say it's too late, everybody's ahead of you. In fact, only a handful of firms have been able to make some innovations, and we'll talk about that. What we would suggest, however, is that it's very helpful for you as you think to the future to figure out which category you're in so that you can know which next steps will make the most sense for you to understand where you're building from. And each of these categories has its disadvantages and its advantages. For example, in the tie down everything and hope for minimal damage, that's great. You still have everything. But it may well turn out you've preserved things that actually, in this changing environment, you would have been better off without. You may or may not have cut the right things. You may have cut too deeply or not deeply enough. And I think also as you look out across your competitors, one of the most important things is you look out and try to figure what they did to get through this storm. Don't assume that just because you saw a headline about wholesaler layoffs that they were necessarily making necessary cuts. We can tell you from many conversations with national sales managers and heads of HR that many, many firms use this as an opportunity to throw a few things overboard that they really didn't want and were provided with the opportunity to. And in fact, they've saved everything they wanted to save. They still have everything in place. So those are our three reactions to the storm, caused mostly by outside elements. And what we would say to you is no matter how your firm reacted, now is the time that you need to decide whether or not you're going to just rebuild or take a new path. And Marianne, there's one thing we know for sure, and I'm going to turn it over to Marianne, who's going to tell you the one thing we know for sure.
What is that, Claudia? Let me go there.
You'll have to read from the slide.